Frogger, the classic 1981 arcade game from Konami where you're guiding frogs across a street and a riverbed to get them home while avoiding traffic, snakes, and other perils that will make short work of your amphibious heroes if you mess up. It's a game that, much like many classic arcade games, have gotten so many conversions to home video game and computer formats that's amazing. Don't know what's so amazing about it, but it just is. The version we're looking at today, for those who can't read the title of these things for some reason, is the one on the Sega Genesis released in 1998 by Majesco, Hasbro, and other people. As an aside, there was also a Super Nintendo version of Frogger released around the same time, but apparently that's a remade version with prettier rendered graphics and updated sound. Supposedly plays the same, but I've never played it or seen it or anything for that matter. A minute part of me wondered why they had the facelift on this SNES version, but this Sega Genesis version is just a straight up arcade port. The conclusion I eventually came up with was that I honestly don't care. Sounds about right. So for those of you who have never played Frogger before, here's a quick rundown. Your main goal is to guide your frogs to their home on the other side of the river. I say frogs because there are 5 open spots on top, and thus you must guide your 5 frogs across the road and along the flowing river to these spots. Once all 5 frogs have made it safely across, it's on to the next wave where you get to do the whole bit all over again, except now it's a tad more difficult. Obstructing your path are automobiles, truckomobiles, snakes, alligators, and diving turtlemobiles. Wait. Contact with a hazard will cost you a frog, and if you lose all your frogs, the game ends. Sounds relatively simple enough, but it isn't simple. It's not all that simple in the slightest. It's not simple at all. You don't believe me? Just ask George how simple it was when he tried to push the cabinet across the street. Poor fellow's been scarred I tell you, for life since that fateful day. Oh, he doesn't show it, but scarred for life, I tell you. Scarred for life. Now in all seriousness, Frogger does have its fair share of challenge that increases incrementally as you progress farther into the game. Cars will move faster, gators will show up in place of logs, that sort of thing. You'll have to contend with snakes somewhere down the line. The level layout never really changes, but that's not a bad thing, especially for a game that originally came out in 1981. It's something straightforward, and yet with each passing wave, throws in something new to curtail you on your way home. With this Genesis version, gameplay is pretty spot on. Everything acts and functions the way you would expect from the arcade original. Control is exceptionally solid, a no-brainer given you're only using the D-pad here. And Frogger plays at a rather solid pace. No slowdown, no awkward glitching. It's an almost perfect port of Frogger as far as 1998 standards go. Indeed, if there's any real weakness to the overall package, it's the lack of options. You can choose to play either a 1-player or 2-player alternating game, but aside from that, there's not much in terms of alternate game modes or options to tweak the gameplay or different game variations. It is, for all intents and purposes, a bare-bones package with a solid, near-perfect conversion of Frogger. That in itself is a solid selling point, but it would have made the package a bit sweeter if they added in, oh I don't know, a couple additional modes, maybe a couple level variants, just to beef it up a bit. But whatever, considering how good the game itself is, I'll take what I could get. There is not much to say about the audio and video portions of Frogger. Suffice it to say, they are almost kinda sorta accurate from the arcade original Frogger. Every sprite, every pixel, every note, every bit of, well, except for these screens, which they sorta slid in there to justify the cover art. They're okay, crudely drawn but otherwise inoffensive. The main game itself, however, is almost like playing the original arcade game save for the difference in screen resolution and dimensions. The sound is pitch perfect, almost comparable to playing the original arcade Frogger. I'm actually quite surprised and almost impressed by how well this turned out. To me, Frogger got perhaps its purest, most accurate home conversion job up to that point with this Genesis version. And if you can overlook and ignore the rather crude intermission screens, you'll find a version of Frogger that not only nails the gameplay down, but also the graphics and sound that have been brought over with a near flawless fidelity. Back in 1998, this was the best possible version of Frogger you could get your hands on, and was as close to having the actual arcade game at home as you were going to get back in the day. Now, if you're looking for a classic arcade game conversion with loads of extra features, options, and game modes to fiddle around with, much like Tengen's port of Miss Pac-Man from a few years prior, Frogger is not the game for you due to the whole bare-bones nature of the package. You're not getting alternate skins or competitive modes or anything of the sorts, you're just getting a painstakingly accurate conversion of a 1981 arcade game, and if that isn't enough, then this is most likely not the best choice for you. However, you have a Genesis laying around and you fancy a bit of Frogger without worrying about additional fluff, then this is one version of the game that you simply cannot go wrong with.